Mindwings Audio presents The Girl Whose Life Went Up in Smoke by Jack Bates, read by Bruce Risen. I looked over at the waitress leaning against the edge of the bar. She rested her flat belly against the round tray she carried her drinks on. "Can I order?" Usually, Carolina was a burst of sunshine within the dark brick walls of the Slippery Rock pub. She had a way of making a guy feel good when a shot and a beer couldn't. On that night, her shining sun looked dim. She'd put her hair up with a ruffled black elastic band. A column of hair with brown roots rose up out of the center of her head. The blonde tips bobbed like one of those fiber-optic trees that were in every swinger's pad back in the 70s. "A rough night, Carolina?" I asked. She pulled on a smile that lacked the usual luminous glow. "No, just wondering if I should go through with some plans I made, Harry." "What do you need, Care?" Angela asked from behind the bar. Carolina rattled off her order. Angela began filling it before she finished. A loud burst of laughter came from a rowdy table of older men near the back of the room. Carolina made a face. She leaned her back against the zinc rail and watched the men. She looked good in her short khaki shorts and her tight black V-neck tee. The Slippery Rock logo stretched over one of her breasts. "I really miss smoking right now," she said. "So you quit?" I asked. "Remember I said I'd buy you dinner when you quit." "No smoking at work, thanks to the Michigan legislature," Carolina said. Angela filled Carolina's tray. I watched her carry it back to the table of three rowdy older men and one guy who was at least 30 years younger than the others. They were all in collared polo shirts and had the reddish shine of men who had nothing else to do but golf their days into beer-drinking nights. They were a foursome, recounting their glory days on the links and later in their beds with wives or girlfriends. One of the guys sat with his back to me. His neck was thick. His salt and pepper hair had waves along the back. Carolina stood nearest to this man. He turned slightly and reached an arm around behind her. I watched him brush his fingers along the outside of her right leg, which made Carolina lean in a little closer to him. She lingered next to this man and said something to him. The other men at the table grew quiet and exchanged raised eyebrows and knowing grins. The man stroking Carolina's leg patted her butt. She smiled and moved off to other tables. As she did, the man turned to watch her, and I had a funny feeling I knew him. His name was Norman Elliot. He and his wife Marilyn had come in the summer before, asking me to find their daughter. Jessica Elliot might have been barely 20 when she went missing. The police weren't willing to go looking for someone who might have just gone off on her own. The Elliots came to me for answers. I got them one, but it was the kind that only presented more questions. Jessica Elliot was dead, buried in a Jane Doe grave in Tampa, Florida. I had given a couple of detectives down there a pretty solid lead on a sideshow drifter who traveled with parking lot carnivals and Renaissance festivals. I never heard if they followed up on it. The period of grief must have passed for Norman Elliot. True, it had been just about a year since I'd gone looking for his daughter. She had already been gone for a year and a half before they came to me. Maybe he had divorced himself from his daughter earlier than his wife had. Sometimes I never know what happens after I close a case. Sometimes I know too much. Carolina made her way back to the bar. Norman said something as she passed. Carolina smiled, rolled her eyes, and shook her head. She looked over her shoulder at Norman, who turned and looked my way. We made eye contact. He gave me the kind of look like he knew me but hoped I wouldn't know him. I tipped him a salute. Norman thinned his lips and turned around to his friends. The younger guy at the table sported a red golf cap over coarse black hair. He had dark eyes, thick eyebrows. The man sat a good 4 or 5 inches taller than the rest at the table. He had the frame of a well-built man who still worked out, and arms that looked like the trunks of small trees. This man slapped Norman's arm and said something, with a nod toward Carolina. Norman said something back, and the men erupted in laughter. They raised their pints and toasted. My gut churned. We hope you enjoyed listening to this recording. Other Harry Landers one-hour audiobooks available from Mindwings Audio include Mumbly Peg, Dan Tana Ain't Dead, 10 Minutes After Midnight, The Girl with the Dragon Wing Eyes, Satan's School for Scandal, The Butcher's Heir, A Model for Murder, Lake Solitude, and Only the Dead Will Whisper.